everyone, and welcome to Random, my new weekly podcast, and I am your host, Sandra D. Bonadonna. It's good to have you here. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. Today we're going to pick up from episode 1 and focus on how to learn how to put a stop to negative self-talk or speaking negatively to yourself. How to stop that. And that's something that we're all really good at doing, and it's very unhealthy. So we're going to go into a lot more detail about that. Maybe touch a little bit back on the 4 agreements because I mentioned those in episode 1 too, and maybe expand on some of those ideas just a little bit. And then before we wrap it up today, I want to talk about depression. So many people suffer with depression, and there's so many different, levels and variances of, and everybody deals with stuff differently. But there's so many of us in the world who, somebody will say, "Hey, you okay? How you doing?" And our answer, even though it's not the truth, is to smile and, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I'm good. Everything's fine. It's good. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And it's habit, I do it all the time too. I think part of that is because we just feel like we don't want to dump our sadness and our blues and our problems and our baggage and make somebody else feel the way that we're feeling. And there's a lot to unpack in that one little sentence that I just said. So let's get started. Let's take a minute. Let's pick up where we left off in episode 1. In episode 1, I briefly introduced the show and the things that I would be talking about. And one of the big ones is something that like I said, I'm still learning to do this. I've come so far. I feel like I'm getting really good at it. But there's times when I fall apart and that very mean voice in my head takes over. And, and I have to start all over again. And it's hard because, mentioning the 4 agreements, this is a book that I mentioned in episode 1, and I'm probably going to mention this book all the time because this book was a game-changing, life-changer for me. I was on the verge of, I'm probably lucky to be alive today. I was so lost and for so long, and for the last it's been about 14 really good years, I haven't been back to those places. But one of the first things that helped pull me out of the darkness was this book, and I tripped across it. It's another one that just kind of accidentally fell into my lap and wasn't recommended by somebody else, and it became the number 1 book I recommend. Because it's short, it's simple, and it's the common sense that life lacks. And regardless of the spiritual angle to it all, and it really isn't all that spiritual. I mean, it's generic enough so that it speaks to any avenue of belief that you have. It's written by a Toltec, a member of the Toltecs, and his name is Don Miguel Ruiz, and like I said, this book is worth it. It's worth it on every level. Run out and pick up a copy at the bookstore. I am a big fan of the Audible version narrated by Peter Coyote. Peter Coyote is one of my more favorite voices in life, so I really, really like that version. And it's about a 3.5 hour listen, and it's on Audible, so I recommend it, and give it a listen. Really, truly, and here's the thing: I don't want to spoil too much about this book for anybody who hasn't read it. Those of you who have read it, you know what I'm talking about. You can easily Google what are these 4 agreements, right? So let's quickly do that. The first one that he goes into is be impeccable with your speech, right? And that's where this idea that many people have presented this idea, but Don Miguel Ruiz in this book, he really, really gets into it. He really gets down to the nitty-gritty of why why your words matter. And your words don't only matter to the greater world around you and people that you speak to every day, they matter to you. Because he says in this book, and it's so true, he makes a declaration that no one will ever abuse you more than you abuse yourself. And right there, like I said, getting to the bottom of that simple sentence is worth investing in this book. It's worth listening to. It really, really is. Because it helps you to back up and kind of deprogram how we were all programmed in to hold ourselves to some standard that we don't even know what it is. We've got a world full of people who don't even know who they are. They just know how to be what everybody else wants them to be. And I can put my hand up and be like, yeah, that's me. I have a lifetime of titles. And the more frightening part of that is that I didn't even really figure out who I was until about 13, 14 years ago. And now I'm still learning, and I'm still getting to know me. The me that isn't somebody's daughter, isn't somebody's sister, isn't somebody's wife, isn't somebody's mother, isn't somebody's teacher, isn't somebody's friend, isn't somebody's something, some label that I mean to somebody else. That's the way people see me. I had to sit down and ask myself, how do I see me? I saw myself as a wife and a mom and a sister and a grandmother and an aunt and a friend and a teacher. I could see myself as all of these things, but I want to find the best way to put that. I couldn't really sit down and say, who am I? You know, am I just that? Am I somebody's sister? Yeah, I am all those things, and I'm blessed to be all of those things, but who am I? Who's Sandra? What do I like? And I kind of couldn't answer those questions. I didn't know, you know. A few years ago, I took a job and went to China and stayed in China for a school year and taught with a university program, English as a second language and English 101 and English 102. And I went alone. My kids were all older. I think my youngest was probably 15 or 16 at the time, and you know, my other kids were all grown, and I had an opportunity to go to China and make a dream of mine come true, and I did it. I still kind of can't believe I did it. There's a whole nother story behind that too, but I did it, and the second that I got off of the airplane in Beijing, I freaked out. I was like, oh crap, what did I do? Oh God, nobody, even using my little dictionary and my translator program, nobody could understand me. I was freaking, I was terrified. And then I got to the school and I got to know people and I moved in alone. And the first time I went grocery shopping, I have 4 kids and 3 grandchildren, and all of my kids has always had somebody in our house. So, at any time we had at least 8 kids, if not more, running around our house. So I know how to cook for large crowds. I'm good at meals for 6 or more people. First time I went grocery shopping in China, I overbought because I don't know how to shop for one person, and it was eye-opening to figure this out, that's how little I knew myself. I could run a list of my kids' favorite things, my husband's favorite foods, the things everybody in my family liked to do, but I couldn't do that for myself. So I overbought everything, and now I've got all this food. First time I cook, I had to call some people I worked with and invite them over because I cooked for 6, not even it's just habit, And it took me some time. First time I was out shopping, I walked around the neighborhoods and I looked at all these different little stores and I took the time to see where was I drawn, what was I really interested in, and it was eye-opening because I've never in my life asked myself those questions. I never did. I've always taken the time to get to know other people. Other people fascinate me. I love to hear their stories. But I've never done that for myself. I didn't know we were supposed to, and I didn't know we could, you know. And it really is. There's something very freeing in learning who you are. And so this leading back into this book, where the author says in be impeccable with your word, he's referencing, don't use your words negatively, especially against yourself, ever against yourself. And and see, for me, that was habit forming. It's something I grew up in church. Even if I didn't grow up in church, I mean, we're just all generally, we're held to these standards that we struggle to get to. And I don't know where we learn it, but we learn it along the way to judge ourselves, to really, really be hard on ourselves, Oh, why did I do that? Oh, what's wrong with me? What is wrong? Am I stupid? What, like, everybody's going to hate me for this. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe, oh God, this is just, and that drama-filled negativity that we do inside of our own heads against ourselves, that we wouldn't want anybody else to do. And that was, like I said, this one part in the book where he touches on that, and he says nobody will ever abuse you more than you abuse yourself. And it took me a while to really break that one. I was like, that's a really good point. I didn't realize my own self-abuse, and we all do it, and it's not just the mental negative talk. It is it happens when you put yourself last, when you're tired and you're exhausted and you really, really just need to sit and have a cup of tea, but somebody else needs something. So you put off your tea, you put off your rest and relaxation, and you run yourself ragged doing for others. And so many people I know do that, especially moms. It's just a habit. Sacrifice self and do for all others. But the problem in sacrificing self is you truly lose you. So, this is a brief kind of general description of all of this, and we'll keep getting into it week after week after week, but it does. I got to tell you, when I first started this, I have a habit of reading 4, 5, 6 different books at a time, and then pulling out little parts of each one of those different books and kind of creating my own kind of program. Just, to see what works, what doesn't work, what, isn't helpful, what is helpful. And when I first decided to do this, to go all in, to be like, okay, that's it, I'm going to quit talking crap to myself. Because I am really, really good at saying horrible things to myself. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I don't like it when other people do it to me. It is the worst thing in the world to be on the receiving end of somebody's vitriolic, horrible speech. But to be the person producing the vitriolic, horrible speech against myself, that was a wake-up call. And I was like, that's not acceptable, man. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I put my foot down, and I demanded that I was gonna find a way to stop that there had to be a way to stop that. And so in this first week, right, and at the time I was listening to a couple of people, and I don't really listen to, but I was listening to a preacher, and a preacher had made the point of the same thing, and he had been saying, look in the mirror and tell yourself you love yourself. And I laughed, right? And then I thought about it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. So the first day that I decided to become this person who doesn't talk trash to myself, I'm standing in front of the mirror, and I'm laughing, because this is ridiculous. What am I doing? This is one of the most ridiculous things. And I'm like, hey, Sandra, hi, how are you? You are beautiful, you are kind, and I love you. And I was like, this is so stupid. And then the next day I did it again. And then the next day I did it again. And about 3 months in, I stopped laughing every time I did that. It didn't take all that long. It might not have even have been 3 months. It could have been way less than that. But then I started to add to it. I just wake up every morning, catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and say something wonderful to myself. I'm always the first person to do that now. And what I noticed when I started doing that, I noticed that so did my family. So instead of the mornings where I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh crap, or bitchy or whiny, or I didn't say something nice to myself and I just went into my day, and my family wasn't all that nice either. But when I started doing this, I'd give myself this warm, receptive, loving, good morning, and say good things to myself. You're beautiful, you're smart, you're awesome, I love you. And I always said I love you, And I started to notice my family was like, hey, good morning, Mom. Have a good day, Mom. Bye. I love you. And it was catchy. My attitude was catchy with everybody else. And, energy works that way. We kind of feed off of one another's energies that way. So it was easier for me to stay with this program because I saw the little tiny improvements, just removing the general blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's me not being able to speak again. Just removing the general negativity in the morning kind of really helped me set the tone for refusing to talk shit to myself throughout the day. And, and every time I catch myself, and sometimes I still do it. And now, even sometimes now I don't even use words. I just, that negative sighing energy. I won't even allow myself to do that anymore. I immediately stop. And, like I said, the one thing that's worked for me were those 4 Ho'oponopono phrases. I really don't understand that much about Ho'oponopono, but I do know that those 4 words, when I took them and I applied them directly to me, it helped me. It helped me forgive myself. Like, I think I mentioned in episode 1, we talk a lot about forgiving others who've done wrong to us, but I can honestly say until I read that particular book, I had never heard of how important it was to forgive yourself. I get forgiveness of others because it's not really about the person you're forgiving, and it's complicated and detailed, and I'll make a note of going into forgiveness as a future topic too. But we don't forgive ourselves. We hold ourselves to these ridiculously high labels that we don't even know how to be. Perfect mom, perfect wife, perfect. I don't know what a perfect mom is. My mom was not perfect. I love my mother very much, but I don't think I've ever met a perfect mom. I've met a lot of really amazing moms, but I have no clue. I couldn't define perfect because I don't think it's real, And holding myself to some standard of a label that I can't even define. Now, these were things that I would have been really grateful if somebody had mentioned in any way, shape, or form when I was in my 20s, when I was a young mom. And but at the same time, I wouldn't be who I am today had I not learned a lot of this on my own. It's been a hell of a journey, especially the last about 15 years of my journey. And I'm glad I got to live it, and I'm glad I got to walk it. So the reason why you don't speak negatively about yourself is because you wouldn't want anybody else to do it. And think about that. Anything that you say to yourself, let's say you made a mistake and your response is, oh, why am I so stupid, right? Let's say you made a mistake and somebody else around you or 3 people around you go, oh, gosh, why are you so stupid? You wouldn't like it. You wouldn't want it. You surely wouldn't expect it. It would hurt. It would sting. But yet we do it to ourselves because it's kind of habit. It's habits are the hardest things to break, and so many negative things that we practice are habitual. And this one's bad because if you wouldn't take that same kind or same type, same form of speech from another person, don't do it to yourself. Every time you go to say something negative against yourself, flip it. Have a positive conversation. Ask yourself some questions, Walk into a room and find a mirror. Lock eyes with yourself and actually ask yourself, why? Why do I feel it necessary to talk to myself like this? Why am I doing this? Is it habit? Do I really feel this way? If I do really feel this way, why do I feel this way? Why do I want to feel this way? Can anything good come from me talking to myself this way? And once you've asked those questions, it starts to make sense. It's a habit to talk crap to yourself. You have to create a new habit where you don't talk crap to yourself. And, it's hard. It really is. It's hard. And we're running into the last few minutes of the show, so I want to take a minute and talk about depression quickly before we wrap up for today. Again, I'd like to mention the name of the book that I've been referencing is Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. You can pick up a copy at any bookstore. I recommend the Audible version, narrated by Peter Coyote on Audible. We're also talking about 4 elements of Ho'oponopono, and we didn't get into a lot of that today, so we'll pick up and do some more of that in episode 3 and talk about those 4 phrases, which are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. But before we end today, I wanted to take a minute to talk about depression. Okay, so here's the thing. Depression. Depression is, wow, it's hard to define because there's so many different kinds. I personally suffer from a very dark form of chronic depression, and I have most of my life. I've been through some stuff, and life is hard, but depression is probably one of the biggest problematic things that I deal with in life, and because I allow it to prevent me from doing things. I allow it to prevent me from speaking to people. I also allow it to prevent me from reaching out and talking to people who care, people who actually give a damn, that could be very helpful. And, I've got some bad habits when it comes to dealing with depression, and that's where I want to bring this up in the podcast Random. We so often spend time talking to each other, but we don't ever get to the stuff that's real, unless it's like political and people are arguing, right? Then they take those real topics and they turn them political and yuck. Just in regular, when somebody says, how are you? I'm sure they don't want to hear, oh God, I'm not good. I'm depressed today. Things just aren't working out, and it's just, I'm not good. Nobody, the thing is, we've been trained to understand that when people say, how are you? They're not looking for that, right? How are you is an American culture greeting. But when you're with the people who care about you and they say, how are you? They're not giving you the culture greeting. They're actually asking. And I've got a lot of friends who do that too. And, for years my answer is, oh, it's all good. Shit might be hard, it's tough, life's a little off this week, but it's all good. It's all good. I got this. It's all good. Rather than being honest, because depression's hard to talk about. I I used to know somebody that I would say, they'd say, what's wrong? And I'd say, I'm depressed. And they'd say, about what? And I'd be like, I don't know. I can't answer that. Just, everything's dark, everything's bad, everything's blue, nothing is good. Even in the good, I can't find the good. There's a darkness, and it's called depression. And this one's tough to talk about because people, like I said, not only have we been trained to understand that people really don't want to hear that, not in passing conversation, but because we pull back in passing conversation and don't talk about these things, we fail to realize that there are people around us who do want to talk about these things, who are okay with us bringing it up. We don't always have to do it alone. We don't always have to put on the pretend smile and pretend that it's going to be okay. We don't have to do that. We are not alone. And the people more likely to really want to hear you talk about it are the people who go through it too. That's another thing that I've learned, right? And that's the point behind this podcast. I wanna put myself out there and say, let's start talking about it. Let's talk about the whole lot of it, because it's hard to go through this stuff alone. It's hard to constantly smile and be like, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So anyway, we're going to get more into that part of it next time too. I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for your support. Thank you for hanging in there and listening to the podcast. And I will talk to you more next time. Until I see you next time, until I talk to you next time anyway, I wish you joy. I wish you happiness. I wish you kindness. I wish you peace. But more than anything, I wish you unconditional love to you and to the greater world around you. Thanks for listening. See you next time.